Welcome to the deep dive. Our job is to take a stack of challenging source material, find a path through it, and just give you the clearest facts and the context you really need to understand what happened.
And today we're doing a deep dive into a really harrowing 5-day investigation. It followed a deadly spree shooting that spanned 2 states and, two of the most prestigious universities in the country, Brown and MIT.
Yeah, our sources synthesized this entire investigation into the attacks by the suspect, Claudio Manuel Neves Valente.
So our mission here is sort of threefold. First, we want to map out the frantic timeline of that manhunt.
Second, we need to understand the critical link between the suspect and one of his victims, Professor Nuno Loureiro. It's a connection that had been dormant for decades.
And third, we have to analyze why the motive is still so profoundly unresolved, even after they identified the shooter. We're really charting a course from what looked like a random mass shooting to something that feels, I don't know, like a deeply personal vendetta. What's so fascinating, or I guess chilling, is how a failure that happened 25 years ago in Lisbon suddenly becomes the central thread connecting a classroom in Providence to a scientist's apartment in Brookline. We'll be looking at the surprising facts they uncovered about Valente's past.
And contrasting it with the career of the man he targeted.
A really stark contrast, yeah.
Okay, so let's start with the chaos of that first attack. It happened right in the middle of finals week.
The worst time. The date was Saturday, December 13th, 2025. It was shortly after 4 in the afternoon, Eastern time.
And the place was the School of Engineering's Burroughs and Hawley building on the Brown University campus in Providence.
Right, and this building, it's a bit of a maze. It also houses the physics department. The shooter, who we now know was Valente, he walked into room 166. It's a big auditorium.
And what was happening inside?
A 21-year-old teaching assistant was just wrapping up an optional final exam review session. It was for an economics class. And the key thing here is the building was unlocked, just a normal day on campus.
And the sources are pretty clear on the sheer ferocity of it all. Valente bursts in just as students are packing up their bags and just opens fire.
Immediately, with a 9mm handgun. Witnesses later reported something like 40 rounds being fired into that room. Just an incredible amount of violence, very quickly.
The casualties were, they were immediate. 2 students were killed.
Tragically, yes. Ella Cook, a sophomore from Alabama, she was the vice president of Brown's College Republicans, and Mohammad Aziz Mirzokov, a freshman, an Uzbek-American who wanted to be a doctor.
And 9 others were wounded. Just 2 young people with these incredibly different backgrounds, their lives just gone in an instant.
For the next 48 hours, all the focus, all the law enforcement activity was really contained to Providence. They were just looking for this masked shooter who had vanished somewhere down Hope Street.
But then that focus shifted dramatically.
It did. The entire scope of the investigation just blew wide open 2 days later. On Monday, December 15th, nearly 50 miles away in Brookline, Massachusetts.
This is an affluent suburb of Boston.
Exactly. And a very targeted murder occurred there. MIT physics professor Nuno Loureiro, he was 47 years old, was shot in the foyer of his own apartment building.
He didn't die immediately, right?
No, he was rushed to the hospital but succumbed to his injuries the next morning on Tuesday, December 16th.
So you have this seemingly random shooting at a review session, and then just 2 days later, the targeted killing of this high-profile scientist. The connection isn't obvious.
Not at all, but authorities pretty quickly established a link. They realized the same weapon was used.
So they were looking for one person.
One person. And that's when the 5-day cross-state manhunt really began. And the pressure on investigators was just immense. They had very, very few leads.
And that lack of information is really key, isn't it? It explains why he was able to just disappear for so long.
Absolutely. The shooter wore a mask, a black beanie. His face was completely concealed, and the part of the Burroughs and Hawley building where he entered and exited was older.
Meaning fewer cameras?
Much sparser security camera coverage.
Yeah. And then they just had some bad luck with the physical evidence.
Just terrible luck. An overnight snowstorm hit right after the Brown shooting. So any trace evidence outside, footprints, fingerprints, anything, it was all either destroyed or just impossible to collect.
Which created this vacuum.
Yeah.
And in high-pressure cases like this, that's when missteps happen.
And they did. The sources mention an initial person of interest was detained. There was even an FBI raid.
But it was the wrong guy.
Totally wrong guy. Ballistics from the shell casings at Brown didn't match a weapon they recovered from him. So he was released, and, critical time had been lost.
That time lag must have been terrifying. But while that was happening, the forensic teams were still working.
Right, on parallel tracks. And they delivered a huge breakthrough on Wednesday, December 17th. 4 days in, They finally recovered DNA and fingerprint evidence from the shell casings at the scene.
So they had an identity they could start searching for?
They did. But before they could even fully process that, an incredible tip from the public just blew the lid off the entire case.
And this is where a regular citizen, an eyewitness, becomes the hero of the story.
Completely. The Rhode Island Attorney General later credited a witness. They only identified him as John with providing that breakthrough.
And John's story is pretty compelling. He'd seen Valente before the shooting.
Hours before, yeah. He encountered him in the engineering building's bathroom and thought he was suspicious, so he watched him. And later, John saw the same man again, a few blocks away.
And this is the crucial part.
This is everything. He noticed the man, Valente, suddenly turn away when he was spotted near a very specific car, a rented gray-blue Nissan Sentra with Florida plates, and he got the registration, 62 DQEV.
So instead of calling the police right away, he actually posted this on Reddit.
He did. He posted his suspicions, the description of the car, everything, and thankfully, other users on there just begged him to call the FBI immediately.
And that one piece of information, the Florida plate number, that changed everything.
It turned a cold case into a live, trackable manhunt. Once they had that registration, the investigation went digital fast. Providence police used their Flock safety network.
Which is a system of street cameras, right?
Yeah, they have over 70 in the city. And they used it to track that Nissan's movements to see where he'd gone after the shooting.
And the footage showed him trying to cover his tracks.
A classic evasion tactic. He'd stuck a Maine license plate right over the Florida rental plate, but, modern tech can see through that kind of thing.
So they followed the trail from Providence
all the way into Massachusetts. They placed his car near Professor Loureiro's apartment building in Brookline, and then the trail led north toward New Hampshire.
And the search finally ended on Thursday, December 18th, just 5 days after it all started.
Right. Police located the suspect, 48-year-old Claudio Manuel Neves Valente, inside a storage facility in Salem, New Hampshire. He was found dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
And they found 2 firearms on his body.
Yes. The manhunt was over. And that's when the focus shifted completely. From the how to the why Brown, why those students, and why Nuno Loureiro.
And that's where the investigation had to go back in time. Back almost 30 years and thousands of miles away to Portugal.
This academic thread is really the absolute core of the mystery. You have Valente and the victim, Professor Loureiro, both Portuguese nationals born around the same time, 1977.
And they both attended the same elite physics program at Instituto Superior Técnico IST in Lisbon from 1995 to 2000.
So they started out side by side, but you can already see their paths starting to diverge. The sources say Valente was academically brilliant. I mean, he reportedly graduated first in his class.
Ahead of Loureiro.
Ahead of Loureiro. But there was also this immediate sign of trouble. Valente was removed from a monitor position at the university in February 2000, which was the same year Loureiro graduated.
So there's a hint of some kind of behavioral issue or friction even before he came to the U.S.
Exactly. And that fall, he arrives in the U.S. and enrolls as a PhD grad student in physics at Brown in the very same Barus and Hawley building that would, later become a crime scene.
And we have an account from a former classmate of his from that time.
We do. A man named Scott Watson, who's now a physics professor himself, he recalled Valente being often unhappy and even angry.
Even though he was brilliant.
Incredibly intelligent. He found the classes too easy, but he was just severely discontented, complained about everything, down to the campus food being subpar, just fundamentally unhappy.
And that discontent just completely derailed his career in America. He took a leave of absence in April 2001 and then formally withdrew in 2003. He never got his degree from Brown.
So this man who was #1 in his class in Portugal just leaves one of America's best universities with no degree and essentially falls off the professional map for over a decade.
And you contrast that with his old classmate, Nuno Loureiro.
It's just a staggering difference. Loureiro's career was the absolute epitome of success. He becomes this world-renowned plasma physicist, a fusion scientist. He joins MIT in 2016. And by 2024, he's the director of the MIT Plasma Science and Fusion Center.
And just months before his murder, he received the Presidential Early Career Award. I mean, that's the highest honor the U.S. government gives to young scientists.
The contrast couldn't be more stark. You have one man at the pinnacle of his field, and the other, Valente, living in a rented room outside Miami. He got legal permanent residency in 2017 through the Diversity Visa Lottery program.
And what's really key here is the premeditation. He didn't just snap.
No, not at all. The source material shows that a custodian at Brown had seen a suspicious person who looked a lot like Valente on campus multiple times, starting way back on November 28th, weeks before the shooting.
So he was stalking the location, the place where his own academic career fell apart.
He was. It wasn't a spontaneous act of rage. He was returning to the scene of his failure.
Which brings up this profound question. If the main target was clearly Loureiro, his successful former peer, why start with a mass shooting at Brown?
That is the central, unanswerable question. Was the Brown shooting just a violent misdirection to make police think it was a random school shooting? Or did that classroom, those students, symbolize something about his own failure there? We just don't know.
And since Valente took his own life, all we can do is analyze the motive through speculation and the few fragments he left behind.
Right. Even the Rhode Island Attorney General, Peter Naruna, confirmed it. He said there are a lot of unknowns about why now, why Brown, why these students, and why this classroom.
So we have to look impartially at the different theories that started flying around because they really show how uncertain everyone was.
On one side, you had social media users who were convinced he was just a disgruntled former student, purely professional jealousy, and they insisted there was no political motive.
But the profile of one of the Brown victims, Ella Cook, immediately complicated that.
It did. She was the vice president of the college Republicans, and that detail just sparked immediate political speculation. You had, for instance, Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville publicly claiming she was targeted specifically for being a prominent young Republican.
And then there's a third theory tied to Loureiro's job.
Exactly. Because he was a leading plasma physicist, another idea popped up that maybe the motive involved his cutting-edge nuclear tech, suggesting, some kind of corporate or even national espionage.
And investigators never validated any single one of those.
No. And the fact that you have these three wildly different theories, personal revenge, political targeting, and tech espionage all circulating at once, just shows how hard it is to apply logic to an act like this.
The political and societal fallout, though, that was very concrete. Almost immediately, President Donald Trump suspended the diversity immigrant visa program,
pointing out that Valente had gotten his permanent residency through that same lottery program back in 2017, so this tragedy was instantly folded into a much larger national policy debate.
And beyond policy, the conversation really turned to gun violence in American schools.
The timing was just painful. The Brown shooting happened on the 13th anniversary of the Sandy Hook tragedy. Brown University itself canceled all remaining classes and exams for the term. It was a profound shock to the system.
Leading to broader discussions, right, about how we handle these things.
Yes, you had Brown professors in the media urging society to redefine gun violence, to really prioritize mental health services alongside security measures.
It's just a tragedy layered on top of a mystery. When you look back, the speed of the manhunt once they got that license plate number it's remarkable.
It shows the power of modern surveillance and coordination for sure, but the human element is what's so haunting. Two brilliant physics students from Portugal whose lives just spun in these completely opposite directions, and 4 lives were wasted in the end, including his own.
And when you try to get inside Valente's head, you're just left with this evidence of chronic failure and bitterness.
We know he dropped out of Brown in 2003, and we also know from the Internet Archive that he posted a quote on the physics department's website right around the time he left the program.
A quote originally in Portuguese, which was translated.
Yes. It reads, "The best liar is the one who manages to deceive himself. These exist everywhere, but at times they proliferate in more unexpected places." You see these two distinct paths. One man, Loureiro, achieving the highest honors in his field, and the other, Valente, just vanishes for 14 years, only to resurface with this horrific violence, targeting the symbols of his own failure and his peers' success.
So the question for you, the listener, is whether that final cryptic message about self-deception sheds any real light on the dark internal world that drove him to kill, or if that specific dark motive will just remain forever confined to that storage unit in Salem, New Hampshire.
Something to think about. That distance between brilliant potential and destructive reality. Thank you for diving deep with us.
I see you next time.